debate show and you're a competitive person.
Yeah.
Why would you want me as a partner? That's bad. You want to go 15 rounds every day with Muhammad Kellerman? That's just bad. You know, it's embarrassing.
Well, Max Kellerman, he finally responds to Stephen A. Smith. You know, they had the First Take. It was the #1 show, and that slot on ESPN, everybody would tune in to watch. And after Stephen A. fired him, got him fired from the show, he went around on a whole tour talking about how he didn't want to work with Max, how he felt like they maxed out, but they were still the #1 show, but he felt like the numbers they were stagnated. They wasn't moving anywhere, and he just didn't want to work with him anymore, right? But for years, Max Kellerman never said anything, right? But Stephen, he would go on all these tours talking about it.
To the people, say they saw the tension between you and Max developing on air before his departure from the show. Did you hear any of that?
I heard some of it. I would take full responsibility for that. That's totally my fault.
Okay.
And the reason why it was my fault, because I didn't like working with him, man. It's just that damn simple. I didn't like it. I thought the show was stale. I thought that we had flatlined when it came to the public at large. And I'm trying to win. I mean, I didn't want to go from #1 to #2 when Skip left. That's not what I wasn't having that. That shit was not going to happen.
Did anything in the numbers say that you might have been headed that way?
No, but to me it did.
Creatively?
To me it did, not just creatively, but the consistency of the number.
Got it.
In other words, it wasn't going this way.
Yeah.
It was just there. And so that's what I was feeling. And it was like, listen, I had mad respect from him from the standpoint that white dude, highly intelligent, Ivy League educated from Columbia, smart as a whip, can talk his ass off, can talk about anything. And I get all of that. But you weren't an athlete and you weren't a journalist. And the absence of the two components left people wondering, why should we listen to you? Okay, well, you might have had that figured out on Sports Nation, or you might have had that figured out on another show. But on this show, if you looked at the content emanating in the social stratosphere, meaning YouTube and other components that you use to measure one's cachet, Q ratings, focus groups, all of these different things, it was like I was damn near doing the show by myself because we were oceans apart in terms of cachet. Well, how are you oceans apart from me if you sitting right across from me 5 days a week for the whole 2 hours? Because one of us is resonating and one of us is not in that platform. And so for me, I was like, look, this is what it is. And we had a number of conversations, one-on-one, many, many times. I know this audience. I know what they're looking for. I know what they need, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, you're going to do what you need to do or you don't. And if you don't do what you need to do, I'm going to get somebody who will.
So when Stephen A. Smith did this, right, a lot of people disagree with it. But we know Jason Whitlock Lovin, Marcellus Wiley, he jumped in the conversation because he doesn't like Stephen A. Smith at all, right? He doesn't like Stephen A. Smith. He doesn't like Skip Bayless. There's a couple people he don't like, because, just for many different reasons. But he got in and he commented on this situation. He commented on the situation by saying this.
So in summary, I heard him deflect, use this straw man argument, play victim. Stephen A. Smith playing victim. And ultimately using the race card. Not just any race card, though. He used the big joker in the deck. And they're like, the BS has got to stop. Okay. Now, I only made that video for Max Kellerman because you kept lying and then you try to punk him out, especially when he's not even at ESPN anymore. He's not even on the network anymore. And you still had the audacity to go on Joe Budden's podcast and flex on.
Now, after Marcellus Wiley made those videos, Marcellus Wiley and Stephen A. Smith, they would trade barbs back and forth. They would go back and forth. Stephen A. Smith and Jason Whitlock, he would say a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that don't like Stephen A. Smith. They say that he's smug. He has a very smug attitude. And we know that the black community, for the most part, don't like Stephen A. Smith because he's always saying something disparaging about the community, right? We call him Stephen A. Snitch, right? So this thing is, it gets real crazy because for years, Max Kellerman never said anything. And he rode the high horse, and people were saying that whatever was in the contracts, whatever, he couldn't say anything. But now he's out and he's talking. He's giving interviews. He's giving his opinion on it, and he practically threw some shots at Stephen A. Smith. If you listen closely, he was speaking his mind. Check this out.
I like Stephen A. and I've always gotten along with him. I didn't love how he handled the aftermath of you leaving, where it's basically like, I told you the show would be better. I just thought, because I think you're really talented. Now, you and I have known each other for a while. Whether it meshed as a show perfectly, I don't know the answer to that, but I just didn't think that was the right way to handle it.
If you're doing a debate show and you're a competitive person,
yeah,
why would you want me as a partner? That's bad. You want to go 15 rounds every day with Mohammed Kellerman? That's just bad. It's embarrassing. You want to like if you're. I have an idea. This is what I want to put on TV. I want to spar Bud Crawford every day for 15 rounds, and I want everyone to see it. Eventually, you're going to say, I don't want to do that anymore. It's interesting because Stephen A. was the one partner I've ever had over like years, where I didn't feel like a relationship was really forming. And I like to go to work and
you could feel a little bit watching it.
The issue with that show is this. What is a hot take? A hot take is a counterintuitive conclusion that on TV, you're going to just state your conclusion. You do analysis about a subject. You come to a conclusion that's counterintuitive. So when you say it, people will be like, what are you talking about? Give me 90 seconds. I'll explain it to you. Oh, at least he has a point of view. But Stephen A. has no hot takes. Stephen A. almost never, I can't think of any counterintuitive conclusions that he ever reaches. That's not his job on the air. His job is to be the big reactor to a counterintuitive conclusion. Reactor. Just, he's there to hear the crazy conclusion that his partner has come to and actually be the everyman with a loud voice. Like, you are crazy, right? And do it theatrically. So there's a lot of pressure on his partner to come up with a counterintuitive conclusion about everything. But there was a lot of pressure on that show. Like Stephen A.'s opinion will not diverge into counterintuitive almost ever. So his big take will be, but he'll deliver it theatrically, is Steph Curry is the greatest shooter that God ever created. Who does not know this?
Yeah.
Everyone knows this. A counterintuitive take would be, actually, you know who the best shooter on the Warriors is? It's Klay Thompson. Because when I'm making this up. I don't believe this. I thought it was Steph. But because when you say greatest, you have to talk about high leverage moments too. And I have more confidence in Klay hitting a high leverage moment 3 than I do Steph. Something like that, right? You have to, that will never happen. So there was pressure on that show for me to keep digging until you hear something you think is crazy.
So basically what he's saying is that, when you're dealing with Stephen A. Smith, he doesn't have the hot takes. Like, he doesn't want to deal in the controversy of the debate because he would lose. Stephen A. Smith wants to be in control of everything, and he wants to control the narrative. And when we watch these shows, even when you watch Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, they would have counterintuitive arguments where they would have arguments about a quarterback, and one would take one side and one would take the other side, and they would be real passionate about it, and they would go back and forth, and people would tune in to watch, right? And a lot of these shows do this. You have to have somebody that just have a straight up wild take, like, what did he just say? And that person would be standing on that argument, like literally standing on it. So, and that's why he gave the analogy of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. Because everybody sees Steph Curry shoot the ball, and everybody looks at him as the greatest shooter of all time. But also Klay was super clutch and a high percentage shooter as well. So you come out and say, well, he may be the greatest shooter of all time, but in clutch situations, I may go with Klay Thompson, right? And then people are like, oh, man, you got to be crazy, right? They get the argument, the ratings get to going up and all that kind of stuff. And Stephen A. Smith don't like that because he never really had a hot take. And that's basically what he's saying. So he didn't want to work with Max Kellerman. And then you deal with Steven. Steven is on the other side, and he's basically saying that this guy has no experience. He's not a journalist. He's never been an athlete. People are not respecting your takes. That's the argument that Stephen A. Smith is bringing to the table. Whereas though he was a horrible athlete, And he was a journalist here in Philadelphia for the Daily News for many years, right? But just because he wasn't a journalist doesn't mean that he doesn't know sports or don't know what he's talking about. I actually thought that Max Kellerman was better than Stephen A. Smith, on the show. And his takes was his takes. But I don't know, y'all gotta let me know what y'all think about this. What's your opinion about this? Max Kellerman finally speaking out, voicing his opinion on what he believed happened. Do you think he was right, or do you side with Stephen A. Snitch? Let me know what you guys think. Remember, I love y'all. Till the next time. Peace.